Hey guys, how's it going? So I realized in my last, I guess, podcast video, I didn't really address what I meant to address, which is how long you should expect to take to get good at programming and kind of how do you literally go about doing that? What's sort of the day-to-day process of getting good at programming? So I kind of just went off on a tangent and I lost my train of thought. So sorry about that. So I'll just shoot a follow-up right now and sort of keep my eye on the ball this time. So it took me, like I said in the first video, it took me about a year and a half before I got to where I would be considered professional grade, or to put a strict line of demarcation on it. It took me a year and a half before I got paid to program. That's the best way to put it. So, and especially before I got comfortable accepting money for programming, that's a whole different mentality. So it took me a year and a half. Now, do I think that was a good amount of time? It's a little bit slow. I think I made a lot of wrong decisions. I think I could have quickened the process if I had better if I had guidance, not better guidance, if I had any guidance. Um, but that's how long it took me. Um, Lately, in the Silicon Valley sort of community, the tech community in general, it's been very much in vogue to sort of say everyone should learn programming. They should teach programming in schools at the younger ages, kind of like they teach languages to middle school kids, French, Spanish, German, whatever. They should teach programming as well. Anyone can learn how to program, things like that. That seems to be a popular tripe these days, or trope, I guess is the word. Let me learn to program. You have all these initiatives by, the government, Mayor Bloomberg, or the former Mayor Bloomberg, saying everyone should learn how to program. Oh, there it is. Sorry about that. Learn to code. Sorry, I didn't prepare for this, but if you look around enough, you'll see all these initiatives, government-funded initiatives like commercials saying everyone can learn how to program, and you really don't have to be a genius and stuff like that. And I agree, you don't have to be a genius. I'm not a genius, but um, I think a lot of this is misguided as well. I think it de-emphasizes how hard programming really is. I want to be clear about this. Programming is not easy. Um, Nothing at the higher levels is easy. For example, running is easy. Anyone with two legs can get up and run. That's easy. But running a mile in under 5 minutes, that is not easy, right? Anything you get to the higher levels is difficult, right? Um, Shooting a basketball is easy, right? I mean, I don't know, maybe that's a bad example. Shooting a basketball into the rim when you're right underneath isn't that hard. Most kids can do it past the age of 10, whatever. But doing that against a tough defense, against a lot of people who are trained, who are physically in good shape and well trained, and shooting a basketball against that is hard. Anything at the higher levels is hard, is what I'm trying to say. This is just my very roundabout way of saying doing anything well is hard. So can you program a hello world in JavaScript or C# or whatever? That's easy. I'm sure a lot of people can do that. Doing these things at a higher level, at a professional level and beyond, is not easy. That's a very important distinction that I don't see enough of in these sort of anyone can learn to program campaigns, right? I think a lot of people have their hearts in the right place. Their intentions are good, but their guidance, their advice can be misguided. And I'm going to play a short video for you right now from another YouTuber who has way more followers than me and a lot more traction. I'm not trying to steal his traffic or anything like that. I just want to point out that I don't agree with what he's trying to say. His name is Chris Sean, so I'm not, I'm giving credit where credit is due. And look him up. I don't know if this is his channel, but this is another programmer who runs programming advice. Anyway, so let's get into this.
Think that when they see people at least when I learned HTML, when I learned CSS, it was 100 times easier to learn these languages than it was in Spanish. And a lot of people can't do it But really, with effort, with determination, even just studying an hour a day, which is what I do, 1 to 2 hours a day, you'll be able to understand it in 2 months.
We're going to stop right there. The only part I agree with that statement is with effort and determination, you can do this. Now, most people, I think for most people that's fair, but there are still people for whom, even with effort and determination, they will not succeed. I'm sorry, that's just true. It's not a very politically correct way to state this, but that's just fact. I can put in all the effort and determination I want to into becoming an NBA point guard. It'll just never happen, unfortunately. It's not going to happen. And there are those for whom that's the case for programming. I don't think it's a very high percentage, so I wouldn't count yourself in that boat right away. I'll explain kind of later how you know if you're in that situation. Now here is where Chris Sean's advice or his his video can be dangerous. He starts putting numbers on this. He said 1 to 2 hours a day, you can learn all this stuff in 2 months. He put out actual numbers. 1 to 2 hours a day, you can learn web programming in 2 months. Let me just play it again just to make sure I didn't miss anything.
At least HTML CSS. An hour a day, which is what I do, 1 to 2 hours a day. And a lot of people think they can't do it, but really, with effort, with determination, even just studying an hour a day, which is what I do, 1 to 2 hours a day, you'll be able to understand it in 2 months. At least HTML CSS. And some people I've been receiving a lot of emails.
All right. So you put a little caveat on there saying at least HTML and CSS. So okay, that softens it a little bit because HTML and CSS is easier than a lot of the sort of the higher the tougher languages like Objective C, which doesn't even come around anymore, but JavaScript, Swift, things like that, Python. But it's still dangerous because let me put it this way: I did not do an hour or two a day for 2 months when I first started out. I did 6, 7, 8 hours a day every day for several months, 8, 9, 10 months, and I still wasn't good. It was extremely frustrating. I want to rephrase that. I want to reemphasize that. It was extremely frustrating. It was the most difficult thing I have ever done. That's not a hyperbole. Um, I haven't. It's not like I've led a life where I've scaled Mount Everest or anything like that. I haven't given birth to a child, but the thing is, I did graduate in Ivy League school. I took advanced levels of calculus. I did tough courses in college. I took multivariable calculus. I took econometrics. These were things that were difficult classes. Um, but programming really kicked my ass. And I did not study an hour or two a day for 2 months. I will say that I didn't do HTML CSS, so the story might have been a little bit different. But I studied 6, 7, 8 hours a day, every day, just 7 days a week. This went on for like a year. Like that's how long it took. And at the end of that year, I still wasn't good. Um, I wasn't professional. I wasn't getting paid. So, I think a guy like this guy, Chris Sean, I know, I don't know, I don't know him, but I have a strong feeling that his intentions are genuine, and he seems like a well-hearted, well-meaning, well-hearted guy. But the problem is he's conflating his own experience with somebody else's, anybody else's, right? And so if I'm new to programming and I watch this video and I'm like an hour or two a day for 2 months, I can do that. Yeah, I'll just come home from work an hour or two a day and I'll just do 2 months. In a couple months, I'll be a good programmer. And I'm finding myself really struggling after 2 months. I'm like, geez, I'm stupid. Like, this is not for me. I don't have the brain for this. I'm retarded. I don't have the right mindset to learn this. And that's a dangerous mentality because when I was starting out, I did I was so bad after 3 months of 8 hours a day, 6 hours a day, every single day, right? And now the only part that I do agree with Chris Sean on is the determination. I was extremely determined to do this because I hated my job. So it's funny when you hate your job, just how motivated you are to get the hell out of there. That was my motivation. So Just to clarify, I was a teacher, and so I had 6, 7, 8 hours a day just to lying around because it was summer, so there was no school during the time. So that's how the logistics work. So I had that going for me. That was a little bit of an advantage I had. Anyway, going back to my main point, my programming journey was nothing at all like the 1 to 2 hours a day for 2 months that Chris John is articulating. Again, I'm sure it's true for him, but it's not true for everyone, and it's certainly not good universal advice. It's kind of like saying, go to the gym once a week and you'll be, Dwayne the Rock Johnson. No, sir. However, believe it or not, there probably are guys who can go to the gym once a week and be in crazy good shape, right? So now we're getting into the sort of the genetic advantages. Who has a natural advantage and who doesn't, right? So this is where I think Chris Sean is sort of misinterpreting. He strikes me as an intelligent guy. He probably just picked up these concepts quicker than I did. That's just the way it is, right? And so for him, what seems like an hour or two a day, not what was an hour or two a day for a few months, got him to a certain level. Is probably what he interpreted as, this is just what most people can do, right? Well, there are guys who can go to the gym for 1 day a week and after 2 months bench press 225 pounds. I can go to the gym 4 days a week for a year. I don't think I'll get there. I don't know, maybe if I took steroids, but you see the point I'm trying to make is I don't have that genetic disposition. That's just who I am, right? I have advantages elsewhere. I am pretty good at math. I'm a good analytical thinker, right? These are my advantages, right? Maybe Chris Sean is a better algorithmic thinker than I am. Maybe he just understands programming better, the nuances of programming, right? And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And maybe I need to work harder to be as good as Chris Sean, and I'm okay with that. The point is this: if the general consensus is an hour or two a day for 2 or 3 months, and then you should be a competent programmer, that's dangerous advice. It really would have discouraged. I don't think it would have discouraged me, but it would have really made me feel extremely stupid, and that happened anyway. To be honest, the first 6 months were excruciating. It was an excruciating experience. I'll just take you through it, kind of a quick rundown, just so it's not as theoretical. So I taught myself C in June of 2010, just regular C programming. I didn't know any programming. I want to be clear about this. I did not take CS in college. I was an econ major. Programming was entirely new to me. At the point, I was a math teacher. Okay, so I want to be clear. I'm starting from zero. All right. So I taught myself C. I read this book on C. I had to learn things like a for loop were new to me. All right, I had to go through all that. Like linked lists and things like that. It was all just completely new to me. Spent about 4 or 5, 6 weeks. I can't exactly remember, but I spent about that amount of time in that book. Got through it. Then I picked up a book on Objective-C, and that was when things got interesting. Because iOS was Objective-C, and that's what I was teaching myself. So I picked up a book on Objective-C. I don't remember specifically which books. They're probably out of print now because everything's out of date, but the publisher was A-Press. A-Press books. This was the publisher. So I was a big fan of these books. I found these to be easy to get through and easy to sort of consume as a beginner. So I just devoured these books. I bought like 10 of these different topics. The Objective-C one in 2010, I went through that book a few times, probably 3 times. And certain chapters I went through even more than that, especially like the memory management chapter. They had a weird chapter on like the Quartz 2D framework for low-level animations in iOS, which for a beginner is just that is just not a beginner thing to be learning. I did not know that, so I had no context. I have no frame of reference. So I'm trying to teach myself all these like C-based APIs for the Quartz 2D framework, learning how to create like Bezier paths and things like that. And I'm still trying to figure out what the hell a pointer is. Right? That's how like raw I was. So I'm trying to learn all that while learning what the hell a pointer is or how to deal with memory management like alloc and free and retain and release calls. Um, really kicked the shit out of me. Right? It was just not easy, and it really made me feel as dumb as I've ever felt in my entire life, and that is not hyperbole. And I again, am I a genius? No. I will tell you though, I got a perfect on the SAT math. I went to an Ivy League college. I took higher level math in college. Like, I'm not an idiot either, right? Like, for some reason, it just it, those skills were not helping me in programming, right? So it just wasn't translating. So I did begin to question like maybe all this academic success is all for shit. Like maybe I was just reading books and regurgitating knowledge, and like anyone could do that. Actual quantitative reasoning, maybe I just didn't possess that skill, and programming is like exposing me as a fraud, right? Um, that's how it felt. It was pretty tough. Um, so I did that for a few more months. I went through the Objective C book a couple about I don't know about 6 weeks again, another 6 weeks. The book really wasn't. I wasn't getting as much from the book as I did from the first one. So what I did is I ended up buying, not buying, sorry, watching the iTunes U iPhone course in 2010 by Stanford, the Stanford course, which is probably still to this day the sort of the standard course for beginners, iOS beginners, because it's just so well organized and everything is so well done. So that was a course on iTunes U. It was like 25 videos, about 45 minutes each, give or take. And that I went through with a fine-tooth comb. I went through every video literally 3 times. So I wouldn't just like watch the video once and then like on to the next one. I didn't do that. I would watch the video once straight through, kind of like watching a TV show, 45 minutes, and then I would watch it again, and I would follow all the code samples on my computer. All right, so I kind of my second lap was where I actually coded along with the video. All right, and then I would watch it a third time, but this time I would write the code on a piece of paper. So the third time would take me like 3 hours to watch because I would pause it and I would write down the code and I would pause it again and I would write down the code. That was my way of drilling in the syntax because I was still fucking up the syntax of programming. That's how raw I was, right? So I knew that was a weakness I had to resolve because every time I would make a syntactic error in the iOS Xcode environment, the whole thing just stops running. They have what's called a precompiler, which means like they check your code kind of as you're writing it, and if you make a mistake, you can't even run the code. It just sort of blocks you. It's just like can't move forward. It's not like JavaScript, where you can kind of run things even if you make a mistake, and you'll find out as it's happening. It's called a runtime error. So in Xcode and Objective-C, you don't get those runtime errors, or you do, but it's not a scripting language. So the precompiler will catch your mistakes pretty much as you make them. So, has its pluses and minuses. It gets you more accurate more quickly. Anyway, I was making so many of those pre-compile mistakes, I knew that the syntax was going to be a problem for me, and I was right. So I would go through the video a third time and just literally write all the code. So we're talking like for one video, 5 hours. Like a video was a day for me. A 45-minute video was the entire day for me. And then I wouldn't move on to the next video until I could go the next day. I can reproduce the code samples. So I would redo the code samples, but I couldn't do it from memory. It was too much. So I would have the previous code sample open, and then I would just type it out again until it became more and more, mechanical, until I could do it from memory. It took a long time, and it was not easy. It was extremely frustrating, very discouraging at certain points, especially when code wouldn't work. I would follow a tutorial online that would take like 4 hours, And these tutorials, by the way, they're a whole nother like area of complaint that I had. What these tutorials do is they bombard you with this. Not all tutorial. I mean, like some of them, they bombard you with this huge like just wall of code that you have to type before you run it. And if you make one small mistake, your code's not going to run. It's that simple. So if you're following a 4-page tutorial, and at the end of page 4 it says now press play and watch it work, guess what? It's not going to work. So you're going to have to go back through the whole damn thing and hope you can find the mistake. And sometimes I didn't find it. So sometimes I would go through a tutorial online for like 3 hours, and I couldn't even get it to work. It was just an exercise in futility. Like it just nothing happened, right? Maybe I got better at some of the typing, and that's it. Like that's just really demoralizing. So to be clear, my tutorials on the YouTube channel, just a quick plug, they don't do that. I don't do that in my tutorials. I'll write some code, I'll explain it, and then I'll run it. And then I'll go back and write some more code, I'll explain it, and then I run it. And then if you watch them, you'll see I make mistakes in my tutorials. And then I debug it, and then I fix it, and then I move on. And I find that to be a much better way to learn because you're not typing 400 lines before you run your code. That for me was a huge source of frustration when following tutorials when I was starting out. And it was another thing that just made me feel really stupid. I was like, I guess I just don't have the brain for this. I don't have the right mentality. Maybe I don't have the capacity. Right? I mean, I don't have the capacity to hit a baseball 500 feet. So maybe this is just another thing I can't do. Right? That's just preordained. It's just I don't have the physical assets for it. Right? So you really have to gauge what kind of advice you give when or receive when you're starting out. Something that programmers do a lot too, now that I've been working in the industry for a number of years, is they like to understate how hard something is. And I see a lot of younger beginner programmers do this. I knew this kid in my office last summer. He's like 19. Jake, if you're watching this, this is not about you. This is about someone else who you never met. So Jake is another guy. He's about this age that I'm not talking about Jake. So Jake, if you're watching this, this is not about you. He would always ask what I'm working on. He kind of took a liking to me. He's a nice kid, but he would always ask what I'm working on because we're in the same office. And I would show him, and he'd be like, "Oh, that's easy. You should just do this, that, and that." and yeah, how can I put it? Like I had like 7 years more experience than this guy, right? And I would see the problems he was working on, and this guy's a beginner, like this guy, he just a couple semesters in college and that's it. And I think he didn't know what he didn't know, so things seemed easier to him, I think. But he couldn't assess the complexity of a problem on the surface very accurately. This is just a very beginner mentality. Most beginners can't do that, and that's why they're beginners, right? So I think programmers have this proclivity to kind of understate the challenge, probably just to make themselves look better than they are, or maybe they really do underestimate. I mean, I used to do this myself. When I was first starting out 5 years ago. I would be like, oh yeah, just I can just make an API request and parse it and do that, and then I would come up against all these unforeseen circumstances that I just didn't consider, and it would really bite me in the ass. So I'm not saying Chris Sean is doing that. I don't think he seems like he's experienced enough and old enough to know better. I do think his intentions are genuine. I just think that his mistake is that he's conflating his own experience with which can be with something that can be applied to somebody else. I did not do an hour or two a day for 2 months and get to a level that was anywhere near competent. That was not my experience. My experience was quite different than that. I did 6, 7, 8 hours a day for upwards of a year. And at the end of that year, I was still shit. I was still bad. I did have an app in the App Store at that point, but that app was garbage. And so it's, that's not worth showing. But, um, this whole anyone can learn how to program sort of movement, it's got to be taken. It can't be taken literally. It's just not. It's not a good. It can be harmful. It can be harmful, right? There are people who want to learn to program who have no idea what goes into it, and they're not ready for the challenge, and they're not up for the challenge. I was not ready for the challenge, but I was up for it. I thought I would learn programming to a professional grade within 3 months. I was wrong by a factor of about 5. It took me 15, 18 months or so, maybe 6. A factor of 6. I was up for the challenge, but I was not ready for the challenge. The problem I see with a lot of people is they're not ready or up for the challenge. So when you say something like an hour or 2 a day for a few months, and people are struggling after doing 5 or 6 hours a day for 6 months, what is the only rational conclusion? I'm not meant for this. I'm stupid. I can't do this. And then that's not good. That's not good. That's not a good good experience, right? Um, then there are the people for whom like that's the right conclusion, and I've met a few of those too. Uh, the litmus test for whether or not you're going to make it as a programmer is not very complicated. It's, are you programming when you don't have to be? That's pretty much it. That's it. Are you programming when you don't have to be? When you're not getting paid, when you're not working on an assignment, when you're not doing something for somebody else. You're just doing it because you got nothing else going on, and you got 6 hours lying around, and you want to try something new. And if you're doing that, then you're going to make it. You should be fine. Your GitHub profile should be full of side projects, a couple things on different areas, trying out new things, new frameworks, new libraries, new platforms, whatever. And you're just constantly doing that. If you're not, really consider whether or not this is the right decision for you, because even though you can probably force it to work, you have to remember you're competing with guys who don't have to force it. Those are guys like me. I program all the time. It's almost physically unhealthy, the amount of programming I do, right? I mean, I'm just in my apartment or my office all day programming, right? Um, it's an obsession, and people say to be a good programmer, you have to have that level of obsession. Then there's the counter argument. Well, you have to have good work-life balance. Look, I agree with all that. You got to have good work-life balance and whatnot. But guess what? Not everyone's going to do that, right? There are people who just don't have that balance, and they don't care, right? I don't care. I'm going to program tomorrow. Today's Monday. Friday, I have no work on Friday. Friday's the only day I don't work. I'm going to program all day Friday. That's it. And then maybe I'll go to the gym and play some basketball for an hour. That's it. That's it. Right? Is this the lifestyle you want? Is this what you consider healthy? Is this the lifestyle I would want for my children? No, no. It's not. It's not a balanced lifestyle. But guess what? This is what I do. Right? So you're competing with that anyway. Right? So I'm single. I don't have kids. I live in my own apartment in New York City. When left to my own devices, no pun intended, but left to my own devices, guess what? I'm just going to program all day. Right? So for the Christmas holiday, I was just programming every day for like 7 hours just because it was fun. It's what I wanted to do. Right? So does every good programmer do that? No, probably not, but a high percentage of them do. I have a lot of other friends who are like this, who they're always showing me what project they're working on, trying new things, making cool projects, things like that. to compare to another industry, like, do you think the top lawyer in the industry, I don't know who that would be, but a top shelf lawyer is studying casework in his spare time? Probably not, right? Is a top surgeon, cardiologist in New York, reading up on or practicing cardiology in his spare time? Probably not, right? Well, programmers do that. So if you're not doing that, yeah, you can make it work. You can sort of force it to work, but you're not going to thrive. You will at best carve out a living. You will earn a living, and that's it. And by that I mean, I don't know, 75K in New York City, something like that. Just a living, right? Um, so that's the litmus test in programming. So it's a lot to think about. Um, I've reached that point a while ago actually, but I'm at that point now where the initial struggle, I'm past that, so I don't make any of the syntactic errors as much, not as much as I used to. Everyone still makes some of those. I have the sort of the higher level conceptual understanding. I have that down pretty good. I understand good architecture, MVC, and now with React, the one-way data flow, it all kind of just makes sense now. It's a pretty clear picture for me. So what that means is now I can just make stuff. I can just play. I can just do shit and see what happens and try to put stuff together. And now it's the fun part, right? It only took me a few years to get there, right? Um, so yeah, that's the difference. So for me, the fun stuff is programming on my own projects. So if you're not doing that or even trying to, then it's going to be a difficult challenge to thrive in your career. I'm not saying you can't do it, it'll just be a lot harder. It's kind of like when I was a kid, I took piano lessons for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. I hated it just like every other kid. I forced it to work. I did my practicing a couple hours a day, hated every second of it. I forced it to work. Um, and I was okay. I was doing all the Mozart concertos, not the concerto, the sonatas, um, and all that shit, and Beethoven and whatnot. And I was okay. But by the time I was in high school, I was burned out. I stopped doing it because it wasn't fun, and so I never excelled. I was never going to be at that level where I was playing in front of a huge audience and in front of a big stage at the, what is it, Carnegie Hall or whatever. I don't know, whatever. Those people love it. They do it because they love it, and that's a different mindset. So um, so yeah, programming. This kind of advice from everyone can program, and all it takes is an hour a day for a few months, and you'll be in great shape. No, no, don't follow that. Don't believe all of it. That is true for certain people. It is probably true for Chris Sean. It was not true for me. I did not. I needed a lot more than an hour a day for 2 months. And if I had watched this video 7 years ago, I mean, I don't think I would have quit, but I would have felt a lot worse. I know that. I would have watched it and thought, man, I'm just fucking stupid. Because this guy just needed an hour a day. I need 6 hours a day, and I still suck, right? Um, so yeah, it's you have to really be careful when you give advice like that. So anyway, I want to be clear. I think this guy's great. I think he's obviously a good programmer. I think his channel is otherwise very good. So I should find it because I don't think I should be referencing his video without. Okay, so here we go. There he is. So I don't know. I guess follow it, Chris Sean on YouTube, and subscribe and all that jazz. So I'm not trying to like single him out as like a shitty YouTube guy. He's not. He's great. It's just this one piece of thing I disagree with, and you need to really take advice with a grain of salt. You have to consider the source. So it's like if LeBron James says, "Oh yeah, just dunk the basketball like I was doing since I was 12 years old. Put the ball in the hoop." It's like, well, yeah, it's easy for him to say. It's not, it doesn't quite work that way for a guy like me. Anyway, this video went long, so I'm sorry. So I'll shut my trap right now, but stay tuned for the next one, where I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about, but it's usually industry related. So if you have any suggestions, let me know. Leave it on the YouTube comments, and I'll try and follow up on that. So thanks a lot. Talk to you soon.